Welcome back to another episode of Seeking the Light of a Thousand Suns. Today we have a very special guest with us who's going to delve into the life of a psychic. But before we introduce our guest, a quick reminder to subscribe to our Facebook page for content extras. Now let's get to our special guest today, John Russell. John has had his first psychic experience at the age of 5. Has been a paranormal researcher since the age of 11, and has been a professional psychic since he was 18 years old. Over the decades, he's studied and become proficient in psychometry, clairvoyance, remote viewing, mediumship, tarot, remote healing, and many, many more aspects of the metaphysical, spiritual, and paranormal realms. He's also authored books on how to increase psychic abilities, his personal paranormal adventures, and in his writing his 4th book, due out for publication in 2024. Welcome, John.
Hi, guys. It's nice to be here. Looking forward to tonight.
It's nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Your experience and testimonies are incredible. No wonder you're booked solid 3 to 6 months out. It sounds like you do it all.
Yeah, I've had, I've been doing this for a long time. It's been 50 years now, over 50 years that I've been a professional psychic. I've read for clients in over 40 countries, which boggles my mind. And I do have a good, strong following, and I do stay booked usually 3 to 6 months out. Sometimes it's gone a little farther than that even. But 3 to 6 months out is the average. So I do have, and I have a lot of repeat clientele among those people. It's not just new people consistently. I've had some people that have been with me for decades. I can think of several people right off the top of my head that have been with me for 10, 20, 30 years even.
What was your first psychic experience? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I'm ready to throw questions at you.
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask you, this might be really, really weird, but since you're booked out like this, do you ever get this is an emergency? Somebody needs your guidance or assistance and have an emergency line, or?
Well, I've encountered that over the years where people have said, I've just got to have the reading today, or I've got to have it this week, or I've got to have it sooner. And in all honesty, in all the years that I've done this, I have never really encountered what I would consider a true emergency.
Right.
And the few times that I have capitulated to that earlier in my career and said, well, okay, I'll force a spot for you in here somehow. I'll skip lunch or whatever. It's not been an emergency. It's been me, look at me. This is me. This is my life. This is what I want. This is what I need. Gimme. It's all about me. And, it's not really been a true emergency. And I think that, so many things that we consider emergencies really aren't. When it comes to a psychic reading, when it comes to the psychic realm, if you have a missing person that the police can't locate and you're running out of time and you're desperate, that's an emergency.
Yes.
But, I've never really gotten anything like that. It's usually people have come to me with that type of situation way after the fact. and said, look, we're kind of at our wits' end here. Can you do anything for us? And they haven't put any kind of pressure or timeline on me because they recognize, okay, look, we're just kind of stuck in the flow of this thing now. And I have had a few people come to me asking for help for either missing persons or for murder cases, things like that. The FBI has come to me once, and but those are the things that I count as emergencies. It's like I really need to know if my boyfriend's coming back or should I move on. That's not an emergency.
No, it's not.
I can't find my car keys to get to work this morning. That's not an emergency. So, like I said, there's been very, very, very few instances in the 50+ years that I've done this that I would count it a true emergency and really try and make room for anything. That was a good question.
Yes. So what was you're just such an interesting person. I want to know from start to finish, your life. What was your first psychic experience?
My very first psychic experience, apart from the paranormal, was when I was out in the backyard, and this was preceded by this experience with a ghost that awakened my portal to the other side and all these paranormal manifestations, but also awakened my psychic gift. And my first true experience recognizing that I was psychic, I was out in the backyard playing with a toy, and I was between 5 and 6 years old. And this car pulled in the driveway, and I didn't recognize the people in the car. So I ran into the house, and I said, Mom, Dad, there's somebody in the driveway. I don't know who it is. And they said, okay, we'll come out and look. And so they came outside, and they said, oh, these are friends of ours. I was like, oh, okay. And I'd never met the people. I didn't know the people. So they were standing outside on the sidewalk talking before they went in the house, and I was goofing around with my toy in the yard. And I walked over to him, and I was listening to him talking. I just stood there for a second and looked up at him, and I said, you folks have just been on vacation. And I said, you drove that car that's in the driveway, and you took 2 kids with you. You have 2 kids. They're not with you today, but you have 2 children, and they went with you in that car on vacation. And the, excuse me, the woman began to get wide-eyed, and her husband was kind of like, what's going on? And I said, the hotel you stayed at had this many floors to it, this many stories, and it was painted this color, and there were these trees out front that looked like this, and they were spaced at regular intervals in the front, and then around back was a swimming pool, and everything was painted this color, everything looked like this. And by this time, the woman's jaw was agape, and her eyes were literally bugged out of her head, and her husband was kind of looking at everybody like, what's going on? And the woman looked at my parents and said, how the hell could he possibly know this? And my parents were real taken aback, and they were like, well, kids and their imaginations. And she goes, no. She said, this goes beyond kids and their imaginations. She said, yeah, how the hell could he possibly know this? And my parents were kind of like, we don't understand what you mean. And she said, that's what we came to tell you today was about the vacation we just took. We drove that car. We took our 2 kids. The hotel we stayed at looked exactly like John described. How the hell is it possible that he could know that? And my parents were like, I don't know. And she was just so freaked out, and her husband was freaked out. I said, John, go play. And I said, okay, nice to meet you folks. And off I went. And so that was my first awakening, my first knowledge that I had this psychic gift, and that I could see into people's lives, where they had been, what they had done. And then it grew from there to the point that I could make accurate predictions for their lives and predict what was going to happen with 80-90% accuracy. And so that's where it started. That was the very first inkling that I had this thing.
That is awesome.
It was a lot of fun, but I scared them so badly they never came back to visit my parents again.
Oh
no! So they were so freaked out. That was it. They were gone. They never came back.
How did your parents take it after?
Well, my dad was he was kind of a closet believer, and I say closet believer because he was big in the church, and of course the church frowned on anything psychic or paranormal or anything like that. So he didn't want to bring the ire of the church down on him. And it also scared him. He was a really rough and tumble guy. Like he had been a rancher and he owned a bar and he was his own bouncer in the bar,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
that type of thing. So there wasn't anything really physical that scared him, but the paranormal manifested, and it was something that manifested totally outside of his control.
Yep.
He couldn't grab it and fight with it. He couldn't wrestle with it. He couldn't hit it. He couldn't
No.
punch it. And so he had no control over it. And that scared him. That frightened him. And I remember one time we were all, we had all these footsteps in the house and outside the house and inside the house all the time when I was growing up. And they were really, really loud footsteps and they would last a real long time. And we were all outside and my parents were working in the yard and I was goofing around, probably getting in their way and probably doing less to help than anything else, being more of a pest. And the footsteps started on the sidewalks. And my mom and I told my dad, said, listen, you hear those footsteps? And they were so loud, he threw down his tool, whatever he had, his rake or hoe or whatever he had. And he walked around the house, hello? And he walked all around the house looking for somebody. And Mom and I were laughing like crazy. And so we knew it was nobody in the flesh. And he came back and picked up his tool and the footsteps started again. And we were like, there it is, Dad. This is what we tell you. There are these invisible people here and he was like, and he moved to another part of the yard and wouldn't even talk to us, So it really freaked him out. It really scared him. It was something he had no control over. And he had a difficult time trying to understand it and how he could interact with it and what it meant. And my mother, on the other hand, she had come from a family that had a long history of interaction with the paranormal, with the other side. So to her, it was familiar territory, and she was a strong believer. And as I was growing up, she encouraged my gift and answered what questions she could for me. And my dad mostly just tried to stay away from everything.
Yes. And not to get us too far off track, but, it's interesting because there's a lot of psychics where it does run in families. And I know, like, in evolutionary biology, there's a lot of study on oh no, I forgot the word. Anyways, it's your DNA, but it's over generations and over time, and how it's not just an appearance thing. It's memories.
Exactly.
It's weird talents.
Yeah.
And such. So I wonder if maybe that
it's
was
just like,
there.
Yeah, it's just like famous musicians' sons or daughters become famous, talented musicians as well.
Yep.
You do have that DNA, you do have that genetic link there, and that genetic memory, and that talent, and that gift. And I think it skips generations sometimes, but there does seem to be that lineage there. And in my family history, going back, there were a few people that did have a little bit above average psychic gift or ability and a little bit above average experience with the paranormal. So that came down and that was part of it. But what I decided to do with mine, I had always had a really, really strong reading ability and comprehension. My mother started me reading when I was really, really young. And I read comic books. Then I graduated to regular books and she read to me. And I read everything I could get my hand on. And I had good reading comprehension. And so around the age of 11, I was doing paranormal investigations and I was reading everything I could get my hands on. And I was reading adult text. I was reading like William James and I was reading psychology and parapsychology and religion and everything I could about the psychic and the paranormal realms. And the reason I did that, I wanted to educate myself and to see how far I could take this thing.
Yes.
And I also wanted to find out what was true and what wasn't, what worked and what didn't. And I discovered there were a lot of things that people said worked, and they did not. They just didn't work. It just didn't happen. And then there were things that people said weren't possible, and I discovered, oh, yeah, they are. Yeah, you can do that. And then I looked at people's lives, and there were people in the paranormal, the spiritual community. There were people in religion and in the churches that were preaching one thing and doing something else, and that were cheating on their spouses and lying and cheating on their taxes and, just all manner of stuff that I said, whoa, wait a minute. You're proclaiming this one thing and your adherence to this code of ethics and morals and this belief system, and you're doing the exact opposite.
Exactly.
So that negates all of that. And so I observed all of that. And so I'm not saying I'm perfect or that I've led a spotless life or anything like that. But as far as my psychic gift goes, I have. Because I determined early on, okay, I'm not going to get caught up with the fakes and the frauds and the phonies. I'm not going to do anything just to make money. I'm not going to do anything just to make a name for myself. If I'm going to do something, I want to know that it comes from a real place and an honest place, and that it's something that actually, literally, physically helps other people in their lives and helps them to advance spiritually or physically or mentally or emotionally or whatever, that makes their lives better in a concrete way. And so that's what I set out to do, and I've been successful at that. And I never limited myself, because some people say, I'm a medium, I'm a psychic, I'm a tarot card reader, I'm a this, I'm that. And I never limited myself that way. I said, okay, I'm going to explore and experiment with everything. And if I can do it well, I'll add it to the repertoire. If not, it goes on the back burner. And so I never limited myself. I never labeled myself. I never said I can only do this, I can't do that. So as a result of that, I've been able to include a wide range of things in my psychic repertoire that I can use as needed. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the third book, 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities, is these are things that the other side taught me over the years, and I know they work. And so I wanted to share that with my clients, because they were always asking during the readings, how can I get better? How can I develop what I have? And so that's one of the reasons I put that book together.
Would you say that you're mostly self-taught, or did you have any mentors throughout your
That's a good question.
learning
I had
process?
very, very, very few mentors. I'm mostly self-taught. There were, where I lived in West Texas, there was a lady that she owned a travel agency, and she would go to the UK and she would find these fairly noted English mediums, and she would bring them back to West Texas to her house, and they would lecture there and do readings for people and this, that, and the other. And I had a couple of very brief sessions with a couple of those, and they kind of gave me some pointers for my gift where I was at the time, but not really anything that extensive. And mostly it was just reading, study, experience. The other side, I've had way over 1,000 paranormal manifestations in my life, physical manifestations. And so it was like, okay, what are they showing me? What are they teaching me? What can I learn from that? So I learned from that. I learned from direct experience. And then I read, like I said, literally everything I could get my hands on. And then, okay, let's apply it and see if it works. If it does, fine. If it doesn't, go on from there. So mostly self-taught, really without a mentor and a mentor. And I think that one of the things I observed over the years was that there were so many fakes and phonies and frauds in the spiritual realm that I didn't want to sit under any of them. I didn't want to listen to any of them. I didn't want to learn from them, because I didn't want to be that way. I didn't want to be tainted by that, and I didn't want to go that way. And even that, I saw some people that had some genuine gifts, but they filtered it through their own biases or their own perceptions or their own whatever. And so it was like, you've got a pretty good gift there, but you're warping it. You're like, well, my main belief system is this. And so when I get something from the other side for you, I'm going to filter it through my belief system, through how I think it should apply to your life and what I think you should do, not what the other side tells you to do. So I was like, okay, that's pretty useless, And what I determined to do with my clients is, okay, I'm going to get what the other side tells me for you, and I'm going to give that to you in a way that you can understand it and apply it unfiltered as is. There you go. Take it and run with it. And so that's what I determined I was going to do early on, and that's what I've always done in my life.
I love that. I really do. And I really like that you bring up to the biases. I've experienced that too when I've gone to get readings done.
Oh yeah.
And then there's that judgmental side, and I'm like,
Oh sure.
well,
Absolutely.
let's take
Absolutely.
a step back.
Yeah, there's the judgmental side, and that comes from somebody trying to exert control over you because they think you should live a certain way or abide by certain principles or this, that, and the other, whatever.
Yes.
And then there's that bias of, I'll give you an example. One of the craziest things I've ever seen as far as filtering something through bias, and really, this wasn't even filtered through a bias. This was just the bias exhibiting itself disguised as part of the reading. I had this friend of mine that was a psychic, and she was actually pretty fair. And I don't trade readings with people because they tell you a bunch of nonsense and it's useless. But she talked me into trading readings with her, and I was like, okay, whatever. And so I read for her, and she really loved it, and it was really great, blah, blah, blah. And when I had come to visit her, before we even talked about trading readings, she was talking about my beard. And she was like, what is this? What is this? And she didn't like beards. So she's like, why don't you shave that off? I was like, I don't want to shave it off. I like my beard. I love my beard. Right. So she hated beards on anybody. She hated my beard and everything else. So when we go and do the readings, I give her reading. And then when she starts my reading, this is what she says. There's an angel here, a spirit here, guide, whatever she said. And she's going, what is this? What is this? She doesn't like this.
Ah.
No. I was like, you know what? If there is some incredibly advanced, powerful, super intelligent being that comes to you in a reading and is worried about my facial hair,
right.
We're in trouble. We are in deep, dark trouble. Right. I mean, if the great Archangel Michael comes down and goes, dadgummit, I'd like to give you some things for John, but damn this chin hair, man, this shit's got to go, Jack. I mean, come on.
Unless he's just jealous because he can't grow one anymore.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
No, but yeah.
I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? So, people will filter things through their own bias, and they will give you things in the reading that comes from a place of bias within themselves that the spirit is not even giving them. So I learned that, and I said, okay, I'm never going to do that with my clients. And that's why I tell clients you may not be satisfied with the reading. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I might tell you things you don't want to hear, but it's going to be coming from the other side. And if you take it to the bank, it'll do you some good.
Yes. And so that I'm a scientist.
Right.
And so in the world of science, there's bad science, right?
Exactly.
And bad science is the bias science, right?
Yes.
And you have to learn to turn off your bias and always be out to prove yourself wrong, right?
Absolutely.
So in the day and life of a psychic, do you ever have troubles with turning it off? Like not bias, but your actual ability.
I've never turned it off. It doesn't turn off for me. It's been on 24/7, 365 days a year ever since I acquired the gift. And I'm comfortable with it. I wouldn't want to turn it off. I enjoy it being on. It's all I've ever known, really. And so it would feel strange if it wasn't on all the time. I would feel, I wouldn't know how to act. I wouldn't know how to feel if it wasn't there, because it's been there my entire life. And I've never attempted to turn it off. I like it to be on. I like that I always have that perception, and that I can always tune into people or environments or spirits or whatever. I like that.
I have personally struggled with because my third eye's always open.
Right.
But to me, it's just natural.
Sure, absolutely.
And I don't really want to shut it down or anything, because to me it's just like my regular eyes. I want them open.
Exactly.
But I love that.
And there's ways to ground yourself. You can go have a good meal or go to the movies or take a nap or whatever. There's ways to keep yourself grounded because you do have to, we live in these physical bodies, we live in this physical realm. And as a scientist, you can appreciate this. They say that, the desk is not solid. It's just a bunch of vibrating atoms, whatever. Well, take your fist and slam it into the desk. You're going to find out how solid it is, regardless of whether the atoms are vibrating or not. They're clustered together pretty thickly and pretty densely. And so we have to live in this realm. And we have to do things that, keep us grounded in this realm and keep us functioning in this realm while we pursue our spiritual growth and our spirituality and our connection, communication with the other side.
Oh, you're speaking to me. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
To me, having it running 24/7, that to me sounds exhausting.
It's really not. Most of the time after I do a reading, I'm energized instead of depleted. And the same thing with doing interviews. After an interview, my wife always goes, "Oh God, here he's going to come in. He's going to be up for hours now because he's got all this energy going." And so it's always been energizing to me. It's always been something that fills me with energy and that kind of replenishes me rather than takes anything away. Now, as I get older, I'll be 70 next year. And as I get older, due to health issues I've had since I was a kid and just the normal aging process, the body gets tired, or the body can't do what it once did. So even though my gift is stronger than it's ever been in my life, I can't do as many readings in a day as I used to do and that type of thing. So you have to make those allowances. But as far as the psychic gift itself, it's stronger than it ever was, actually. It hadn't weakened any. It's always gotten stronger. And, it's one thing I think that, especially at this stage in my life, I wouldn't want to tone it down or turn it off or anything, because it's what keeps me energized the most right now, due to my physical limitations.
Yes.
So when I think like 24/7, in my brain, I'm thinking, you go to the grocery store, you go to select an orange, you're getting images, impressions, and everything in pertaining to this orange. You walk by people while you're shopping down the aisles, and you can either hear their thoughts or understand what they're thinking or see their guide next to them. Like, this stuff is going on 24/7.
Yes. Yeah.
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 But you filter it. I mean, like how I see it is, it's like listening to a radio, right? You have advertisements. Right. I mean, there's things that you don't always really need to hear. And then there's things that stand out.
You learn to modulate it. You learn to, okay, I really need to pay attention to this.
Yes.
And this is just kind of background noise. And you learn to make that differentiation. So you tune in on the really important things. And it's just like you're saying, when you're listening to the radio, you may all of a sudden, oh man, that's my jam, and I got to listen to the song all the way through. And then the phone rings and somebody's there and the radio's still going, but you're not hearing any of the songs consciously.
Yes.
Maybe subconsciously, but you don't know that Paul McCartney and Wings just played, or that Metallica just played, or whatever, this, that, and the other. And then you go back about your business, and eventually you tune back into the radio. So for me, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like, okay, what's happening here, this particular energy, I really need to pick up on, interpret right, pay attention to. And then other things, it's just like, oh, okay, look, that person's, dead grandfather's trying to get through to him, but I'm not led to say anything right now, but they're trailing them through the grocery store or whatever. And so you learn what you have to pay attention to and what you don't.
What about animals? Do you see people's pets?
Yeah, I've seen I've seen my own pets. Hang on here a second. We're going to have to edit this out. I've got to sneeze.
Okay.
Oh, it's okay.
Hang on.
That's okay. We're editing.
Christina. Or Maya.
Oh my God. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, but other people's animals do come through for them in the readings. And I've had 2 of my own pets come back in the flesh and visit me, which was really phenomenal. So yeah, there absolutely is that connection with animal spirits on the other side, and they do come through. I've had in the readings, I'll say, who's the little fluffy orange-covered dog about a foot high with a little stubby tail that wags really crazy and all that? Oh, that was Jack. He was our little, baby, blah, blah, blah. So they do come through. Yeah, absolutely.
So kind of going back to what Maya had asked about, every day in the mundane world.
Right.
Have you ever felt the need to approach a stranger with a pressing message?
Oh, yeah. And I've done that to people. I remember this one time. I was sitting in a bar in a restaurant, sitting at the bar drinking, and this lady came in, didn't know her from Adam. She didn't know me from Adam, and she was picking up a to-go order. And she leaned on the bar, and we looked at each other and smiled, nodded, hi, how you doing? And I kept staring at her, and she kind of got a little uncomfortable. And I said, "You're just about to get married, aren't you?" And she goes, "Pardon me?" I said, "You're engaged. You're about to be married. You're getting married like within a week or so, right?" And she looked at me. She said, "Do we know each other?" And I said, "No." But I said, "Run." I said, "If you marry this guy, this is going to be the biggest mistake you've ever made in your life. Run."
Oh, wow.
And she's looking at me like bug-eyed, like,
Wow.
Who is this freak? So I pulled out my business card and I gave it to her and I said, "You don't know me from Adam, but I said, look at my website, check out my testimonials." I said, "Listen to me. You marry this guy, you're going to be sorry." And she looked at my card, she looked at me, so I go, "Okay, thank you." And off she went with her to-go order. So I don't know whatever happened there, but I was told by the other side to tell her that. So I did, and then I would do some things just kind of for fun on my own sometimes. Like I remember this one guy I tuned in on at the bar, and he was pretty well into his cups, and I went up to him and I said, "Well, did you sell the ranch yet?" And he looked at me and he's like, "Do I know you?" I said, "Oh yeah, so and so, and I'm his friend, all this, all that." And he's looking at me like, "Oh, okay. How'd you know the ranch is up for sale?" I hadn't really told anybody yet. I was like, "Well, it's a good time to sell the ranch." I said, "It's a you ought to do that. It's a good thing. You ought to go ahead and get that done now." And he's like, "Okay, yeah." It's like, so there were things like that I'd do kind of on my own sometimes just for grins. And I knew it would help the person, but it was, for me, I don't know, it was kind of a kick. It was kind of a way to get some jollies. But
I love
most
that.
of the time, I didn't tell anybody anything unless the other side said, "Hey, go tell this person thus and such," and then I would.
That story about the woman getting married gave me goosebumps the size of bowling balls.
I wish someone would have told me that back then. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone was trying, but I wasn't listening.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing I'll tell people. Look, it's like it doesn't do any good to ask for spiritual guidance, whether you ask for it from a psychic or you ask directly. Doesn't do any good to ask for the guidance if you're not going to obey it, if you're not going to follow it.
It's very true.
It's like, and I was writing about this in my latest book. There was a new client that came to me that was referred by two clients that were really, really good clients of mine. And they had referred this person to me. And during the reading, I said, your marriage is over. I said, your spouse has basically already moved on and has kind of basically already found somebody else. And you're out of the picture and the marriage is done. I said, so you need to understand that, prepare yourself for that, and prepare yourself to move on with your life with that understanding. So we went through several more things in the reading, and they liked what I said on the other things, and they kept coming back to the marriage and saying, "Now, do you really feel like you're really picking up that this is over, that this is it?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. Take it to the bank." So we got through with the reading, and they didn't seem, overly distressed or upset with me or anything at that information. And a few weeks later, or it may have been a month or so later, but a short time later, the friends called that had recommended this client. And they said, "Oh, we've got to talk to you about so-and-so's reading." I said, "Well, I can't do that. The readings are confidential." And they said, "No, we're not asking you for information. We're going to give you information." I said, "What's going on here? What are you talking about?" And they said, "Well, when you told them that, the marriage was over, it was done, he the spouse had moved on, found somebody else, and blah, 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 they were absolutely incensed. They were just furious. I said, really? I said, we were very, very cordial on the phone. And when we said goodbye, they were very cordial, very nice. There was no indication at all they were upset. They were like, oh my God, you can't believe how upset they were. And they said, John, this is no exaggeration. We counted. They went to 10 other psychics after you. And every single one of those psychics said, no, this guy's wrong. Your spouse is coming back. The marriage is going to be healed. It's going to last forever. Everything's fine. They said, Johnny, they filed for divorce today.
Wow.
So, the point there is, so many people will go to a psychic or ask for guidance and inspiration, whatever direction, and only if it's what they want to hear, only if it falls within the purview of, this is how I want things to turn out. And I remember I was doing another reading for a new client one time, and they were just disgusted with me. They were just appalled. They were like, this is not what I want to hear. Tell me what I want to hear. And I said, I cannot do that. And they said, come on now, really charge up. Let's get some real psychic power going here. We got to get some psychic energy going here. You're not telling me what I want to hear. Yeah. And I said, no, and I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. And they were wanting this one particular, they were wanting to venture into this arena of life that just was not them. They weren't prepared for. They would totally fail at. It was never, ever going to work out no matter what they did. And I told them that. And I said, this is just not going to work. Well, they didn't want to hear that. And they were just horribly upset that I wouldn't tell them, oh, yeah, this is the right path for you, right place, right time. You're going to be a success and making tons of money. But that wasn't the case. And I saw it wasn't. I saw they were going to fail miserably if they went into it. So I said, look, I'm not going to lie to you. This is what I got to give you. So you encounter that with some clients as well,
So you've got this amazingly large toolbox of psychic abilities that you've honed over, a very large number of years.
Right.
Is there one in particular that you would say is used the most often, or is one of your biggest go-tos or tools for helping people through in their readings?
Yeah, there is. The main thing for me over the years, it's just this practiced and growing awareness of being in virtually constant contact with the other side to get this information. And that's my go-to. That's the thing I rely on more than anything else. I mean, I use tarot cards in reading, and I use other implements, sometimes crystal balls or pendulums or dowsing rods or whatever. I'm versed in all of that and capable with all of that, but I don't need it. It's like an adjunct. It's like the frosting on the cake. And sometimes I might use it just for extra detail or just to sharpen up an area of my spiritual life that I want to sharpen up to keep that edge using that particular tool or technique. But the main thing is just, hey guys, what does this person need? And I don't need anything for that but me and my connection with the other side. So that's my go-to thing and everything.
So is that through like clairvoyance or clairaudience, or through?
It's a combination of all of those things, and it's kind of how they want to communicate a fact to me at the time. And sometimes they'll do it through a visual, sometimes they'll do it auditory, sometimes they'll do it olfactory. So it just depends on how they need and want to communicate something to me in a manner that is meaningful to me and attention-getting for me, so that I pay attention to it and then interpret it and then pass that on to the client. And they usually give it to me in a way that not only is it meaningful and makes me pay attention, that it really gets my attention so that I know it's important, but that the way that they present it to me to pass on to the client is always something that the client will recognize, respond to, and say, okay, yeah, I get that, or I know who that was, or, I get this, I know what you mean.
So what is the most common thing you help people with in your 30-minute sessions?
Oh, romance and money and health. You know, the big
Yes, the
three,
three.
the big
The
three:
three.
romance, money, and health. And money includes job and career and inheritance, and the arguments with the siblings over the will and that type of thing. And then of course
Mhm.
love and romance, and then the health. I've got this problem, or am I going to be okay, or how is my health? I don't have anything wrong now, but is it going to stay okay? So those are really the big three issues, and there's a lot of things. Each one is an umbrella that a lot of subsidiary things fall under. So those are kind of the big three in the readings. And it's really funny, when 9/11 happened, I was expecting to be inundated with calls going, is more coming? Is this literally the end of the world? Is
Oh,
this
yeah.
World War III? Blah, 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 blah. You know what the calls I got were?
What?
Is my boyfriend coming back? Am I going to get this job? Is my health okay? I mean, we had just suffered this national
Wow.
calamity, unlike anything we'd
Yeah.
experienced since Pearl Harbor, and not one question about it. Not one question about our future. Are we going to survive? Is this the beginning of the end? It's like, nope. Is my cheating boyfriend ever going to straighten up? And it's like,
Oh my.
okay, so that's people's mindsets.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe some of that is that maybe that is just too scary, and there's some people that just could not handle.
Yeah, they don't want to know. Yeah.
Right,
It's like,
right.
I'd rather not know. And I've had people, that's funny that you bring that up. I've had people tell me that, when they found out I was a psychic, and when they found out I was a good, accurate psychic with all these insights, especially if they had talked with someone that had gotten readings with me. And, they would say, I don't want to know. Whatever you see, I don't want to know. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. And it's like I always tell people, I say, look, if I see something bad, I'm going to tell you how to avoid it, or at least mitigate it, at least minimize it. And
Yeah.
likewise, if I see something good, I want to tell you how to position yourself to take advantage of that. But even then, some people are like, nope, 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 don't tell me, don't want to know. I had a dear buddy of mine that when I sold my house before I moved up north to be with my wife, I stayed with him for a couple of years. And he was a great, great friend of mine, great buddy of mine. We had a great time together. And he told me one time, he said, John, he said, I believe in you. I believe in every single thing that you do. I believe in your gifts. I believe all of it's real. I believe you're real. But if you see, hear, smell, feel anything in my house, don't tell me. I do not want to know. And we had,
I know
I
someone
write,
like that.
I write about him in my second book, A Knock in the Attic. While I was staying there with him, we had this requirement for movies, and they had to be rated 1.5 stars or less, and they had to have nudity, violence, and cursing, and senseless
Yes.
murders and everything else. So that was our criteria for movies. So I'd asked my guys, I said, look, I said, anything you do, I'm used to, nothing bothers me, but it scares him to death. Behave while he's in the house.
Yeah.
And so they were pretty good until one night. And so we're watching this movie. We'd found this movie with 1.5 stars. And we each went and got a beer, and we're sitting there watching the movie. And we said, okay, unless there's gratuitous nudity and sex and violence and murder and mayhem and horror within the first 15 minutes, it's not going to be worth watching. Well, everything happened within the first 15 minutes. We're like, yes, yes, our movie. So we're watching this movie, and it was an open floor plan house, and right off the living room was the dining room, the kitchen. And from in the kitchen, there came this sound like somebody had climbed up on a 6-foot step ladder and dropped 5 or 6 metal cookie sheets stacked together onto the floor
Woo.
from that height. Now, he was a good cook. I was a good cook. And the rule that we self-imposed upon ourselves is whenever we cook, the kitchen was clean, spotless. All the dishes were washed, put away. There was nothing out. So there was nothing in the kitchen that could have made that noise. And like I said, this was like 5 or 6 metal cookie sheets dropped from 6 feet onto the floor.
Oh.
So excuse me. I looked over at him and I said, Bill? And he said, yep. And I said, ain't you going to go see what that was? And he said, he was in a soft cloth recliner. and his hands were dug so far into the recliner arms that you couldn't even see his fingers. That's how tight he was gripping the grips. And from then on, for the rest of the night, I had to get up and go to the refrigerator and get the beers. He wouldn't even go in the kitchen.
I love that. It reminds me a lot of mine and Maya's relationship.
If it's dark,
Yeah.
nope.
And so I'll be the investigator.
If it's
I'm like,
dark,
I'll hold your hand.
No.
I don't mind ever.
you can go look by yourself. If it's still happening in the morning,
I usually do.
I'll check it out if it's still going on in the morning.
There you go.
But then I know
another friend
not to.
of mine that I would stand in front of a radio, like a plug-in transistor radio. I would stand in front of a radio and it would go off the air. And when I first discovered that was unnatural, I was in my teens and I had a buddy of mine, and he'd come over to the house and we were in my bedroom. We had the radio playing. We were fixing to go out and cruise around. And so I walked in front of my radio to do something, and it went off the air, and I moved and it came back on. He went, "What did you do?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Stand in front of the radio again." And I did, and it went off the air. And so he said, "Move." And he went over there and stood in front of it, and it kept playing. And he was like, "Okay, this is too weird." So that's when I learned that I would affect things like that sometimes, electronics and electrical things.
Maya.
And fast forward many years later, and sorry, my little dog's going nuts in the background.
I love it.
Fast forward many years later, and Bill, as a matter of fact, the buddy I was staying with, had another buddy come over to the house, and I was in my room there, my bedroom in Bill's house, and I had a plugged-in radio, had it playing, and I walked over in front of it, and it went off the air, and I moved, and it came back on, and my friend said, "What in the world was that?" I said, "Watch this." And he had shag carpet in this bedroom, right? I walked over and I said, "Okay." I stood in front of the radio and it went off the air. And I stood there. As long as I stood there, it was off the air. And the second that I moved a few feet away, it would come back on. So I put my feet in the shag and wiggled them around. I said, "Now you come stand right here where I was." And he stood there and the radio kept playing. And he went and sat back down, and I went and stood there and the radio went off the air. He jumped up and ran out of the house. He said, "Russell, I got to go." And
I'm done.
He freaked out. So, yeah, it can get a little freaky for people sometimes.
Thankfully, not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
I can really mess some things up with electronics, but only when my anxiety is over the top.
Yeah.
So, what type of remote healing modalities do you do?
My remote healing hasn't actually been that successful. For me, it tends to work better for me if I'm near the person. If I can create an energy field around them with my hands, or touch them laying on of hands, or get close to them and transfer energy, that works better. There's been a very few cases where I've been able to do any type of remote healing that was successful. Mostly the person needs to be in proximity for me. So that's one thing that, as far as a remote thing, it hasn't worked out well. Now, interestingly enough, I've been able to send remote energies to people and move things in their houses or disturb things in their houses, things like that. And that seems to be pretty easy, but the remote healing seems to be very difficult.
I'm just going to say, please don't move anything in my house right now.
Oh, come on.
I will pee my pants. I will pee my pants.
You can use me as a guinea pig. I'm okay with it. My kid will just think it's hilarious.
I had a friend of mine. We had met online, and we were, potential dating partners. And so we met and had zero romantic chemistry, zero sexual chemistry, but we really, truly liked each other as friends.
Yes.
And so we started hanging out a little bit together, and we would call and talk, and we would text, email, whatever. And actually, this is before texting, so email. But we would communicate pretty frequently, and then every now and then we'd meet at the bar, have a drink, something like that, or go out for dinner or whatever. And it really was just a good friendship. And it was a shame we didn't have romantic chemistry, but it turned into a good friendship. And it was New Year's Eve, and we said, well, let's meet at the bar and we'll have a couple of drinks. And then she was going to see some friends afterward, and so I guess it was about 9:00, and she said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to have a few more drinks, go home, go to bed, and go to sleep. She said, you're not going to stay up and see the old one out and the new one in? I said, no, it'll be here. So she said, well, I'm going to my friend's house. We're going to open some wine. We're going to talk. We're going to see the old one out and the new one in. I said, okay. So we gave each other a hug and a kiss, wished each other a happy new year. And she was gathering up her purse and everything to leave. And I said, you know what? She said, what? And I said, I'm going to send a ghost home with you. And she laughed. And I said, don't laugh. I'm serious. I'm going to send a ghost home with you. And she's like, no, okay, whatever. And she knew what I did, and she believed in what I did and everything, but that was a little far-fetched for her. So I said, just wait, you'll see. And so we bade each other a good night, and she left, and I went home and sleep. And the next day I got up, and there were like two messages on my voicemail and a bunch of emails in all caps and all this stuff. And so what had happened was she had gone to her friend's house for New Year's Eve, and they had opened bottles of wine, were drinking everything. Now, this is during the winter, so the house is closed up tight, no doors, windows open. And they were sitting in the kitchen, and where the heat register was in the kitchen, it wasn't positioned to blow anything or make any movements or anything. So they had this, those 3-tiered metal baskets that hang from a hook in the ceiling, and they've got 3 tiers, 3 levels to them, and you put bananas in them or fruit in them, whatever. Well, the lady had one of those in her kitchen there, and they were sitting at the kitchen table, drinking the wine and talking and laughing and everything. And she said, I out of the corner of my eye, I look over, and this 3-tiered basket is starting to swing. And she said, it's moving back and forth just a little bit and real slowly. And I'm looking around. I said, well, wait a minute. There's nothing open. It's cold. It's wintertime. There's nothing to create a draft. There's no doors or windows open. And the heat register isn't where it would affect that. And she said, as I'm watching this thing, it begins to swing more and more. Instead of slowing down, the arc of the swing gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And she said, oh, my God. And she said, one of the friends asked, what are you looking at? And they look over and hear this basket is swinging back and forth. And she goes, well, what in the world's causing that? Is it some kind of vibration, like the big truck go by, or there's a plane flying over something? And there's like, no, nothing like that happened. And that wouldn't cause us to do that anyway. So what in the world's going on? So they're all kind of getting silly and laughing about it and everything. So the lady whose house it is, she stands up, walks over, grabs a basket, makes it stop, makes it still, and goes back and sits down. So they're talking again. She said, out of the corner of her eye, here the basket starts again. And now it's swinging in an arc that's about 1 foot to 2 feet. It's like it's really going. And everybody looks over and they see the basket and they're like, what in God's name? What is going on? She goes, oh, John and his damn ghost. And they're like, what? Who's John? What ghost? So she tells them, I know this guy. This guy's a psychic. He said he's going to send a ghost with me when I go home tonight. Now they're all pretty tipsy, and they're like laughing like crazy. They goes, oh, my God. So she goes over, stops the basket again. So they sit down, they're talking about this, and well, tell me about this, John, and tell me about the ghost, and tell me everything that's going on. Now they look over, the basket's going again, and this time it's about 2 feet, almost 3 feet, and it's arced and it's swinging. So that was the messages she had left me in the emails in all caps, just to let you know, thanks a lot. You sent the ghost all right, and this is what it did. So it made a pretty exciting evening for them.
So I'm assuming you knew that it was going to be a fun prankster when you sent it home?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did you just say, just stay the night and then move on your way?
Yeah, just go give them a good time. Let them know you're there. Give them some irrefutable evidence. And And it did. I did that to another buddy of mine as well. The guy that ran out of the house with the radio thing. I told him, we were talking on the phone one time, and this when I was living in New York, and he was back in Texas where I grew up. And I said, I'm going to send you some energy down, a spirit down or some energy down, and they're going to do some things in your office there that you can't ignore. And he called me the next day, and his office was locked up tight and nobody had access to it. He didn't have cleaning people or anything like that. None of his family members had a key or anything. He was the only one that had the key. And he called me up the next day and he said, Russell, he said, you can back off now. He said, I believe everything's, I said, what happened? And he said, I walked in and my refrigerator was about 2 feet from the wall.
Yeah, you can't really ignore that. What in the world?
And he said, okay, you can knock it off now. I believe it's cool. You've made your point. It's copacetic. Yeah, so it was fun to do things like that every now and then.
And all I keep thinking is, Hercules, you must have sent some good...
It's got to be a strong spirit to go down there and do that.
So, like, if our listeners wanted to increase their psychic abilities, but they didn't know anything about where to start, where would you steer them for starting first?
Get my book, 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities. I wrote this book specifically for people that don't know anything and don't think they have any special abilities and don't know where to start or how to start. And I take people literally by the hand, lead them step by step. I define each technique, tell them what it is, define it for them so they know what we're talking about in simple, easy, plain terms. And then I teach them step by step how to learn it, how to practice it, how to get good at it, and then the real world application of it. And each chapter has a different technique. So 20 techniques to increase your psychic abilities. And there's everything in there from psychometry to crystal ball gazing to candle magic to attracting the perfect mate, seances, on and on and on. So you will find something in there that will work for you, that'll be helpful for you. You may use all of the book. You may use just 2, 3, 4, 5 things out of the book. You may find one thing that is like, oh, this is it for me. I'm going to wear this thing out. And so the great thing about this book, like I say, the other side taught me these tools and techniques over the years. So I know that they work. And then when I wrote the book, I wanted to strip away all the gobbledygook, all the complications, all the unnecessary stuff, so that it was easy to understand, plain language, simple language. And I also want people to understand that to do this, you don't have to wait till the 3rd full moon of the year, go out at midnight, cut a willow branch and do this or that. You don't have to do any of that. There's no special tools required. There's no expensive, hard to find, rare ingredients for you to get. Most of the things in there you can do just by yourself or with what you've got in your home. The few things like even crystal ball gazing, you don't have to buy a crystal ball. You can use a bowl of water. You can use a mirror. You can use all those types of things. So you could make do with things already in your house. Other than buying a crystal ball, I think the most expensive thing in there is you may have to go out and buy a few lemons and a box of nails. And that's a riff on an old spell that the other side taught me to achieve a particular magical working that's beneficial for you. And, you know, everything is so easy to do, easy to learn, easy to practice. Doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. You don't have to spend any money. You don't have to learn any special weird language or chants or anything else. It's just cut and dried, easy to do. And that was a bone of contention with me because so many people, try and tell people, oh, it's hard to learn and you got to practice all these years and you got to have all these special tools that you hunt down. Some of them are rare, some of them are expensive. You got to dress a certain way, say certain things at a certain time of the day or night, blah, blah, blah. No, you don't. You really, really don't. If you want these techniques to work, there's the book. They're easy to learn. They will work for you if you practice them. And it's like anything else. You know, if you want to learn to play piano, and you sit down at the piano and practice once a month, you're not going to get very good. So it's the same way with spiritual work. You know, this is interesting, and you try it a time or two, and you don't pick up the book and do the lessons again for, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, you're not going to make any headway. You're not going to see anything happen. You're not going to change your life. You're not going to have any experience. But if you devote at least, 10, 15 minutes, half an hour to it every single day and really put yourself into it and really do what I tell you to do in the book, you're going to see some results.
I actually have your book up right now.
Can
because
we?
I'm going to buy it.
There you go. There you go. Well, I appreciate it. You're going to enjoy it.
I've added your other ones to my list too of.
Oh, thank you. Bless your heart.
Can we step back for just a second? You brought up mirrors, and so I also have, I personally have a divination mirror,
Right.
but I've heard a lot of stuff on like TikTok and Reddit and other places where there are a lot of metaphysical or pagan people that believe that mirrors are portals. And that some will just say flat out, completely stay away from them. Others will say you have to know how to seal them. You have to make sure that they're closed and that you're not letting this. Do you have anything that you can share about that at all? Do you feel that that's
because
legitimate?
That's just like using a Ouija board. Everybody's scared to death of the Ouija board, right? And the funny thing is, and people will argue this point with me, but you can't really argue this point with me because this is just the black and white facts of it. If you use a crystal ball or a mirror or dowsing rods or a pendulum or tarot cards to communicate and connect with the other side in whatever capacity, whether that's your spirit guides, guardian angels, just the universal mind that's out there, whatever you're making a connection with, you're using the same principle and the same motive energy that you are when you use a Ouija board. So using tarot cards is no different than using a Ouija board. Using crystal ball is no different than using a Ouija board. It's all the same power. It's all the same connection. Okay. When you use a mirror for scrying or a crystal ball or anything else, people are always like, okay, well, you got to approach it thus and such, and you got to say a prayer, and you got to do this, and you got to invoke this, and then you got to close this, and you got to sneeze 4 times and spit and go take a shower and all this, or else all the demons are going to come get you and you've opened this portal and all this. That's all nonsense. If you are dealing with an intelligent entity with its own will, volition, emotions, and everything else, and especially if you're dealing with an entity that has more intelligence and more power than you do, how are you going to order it around? If Arnold Schwarzenegger's in front of you at the checkout line, what are you going to do? Go up and slap him on the back? Say, hey, fool, get out of my way. You're going to wind up picking up your teeth.
Hercules.
It can be the same way when we're dealing disrespectfully with these entities. We have to understand that right now, where everybody is, you and me, all the listeners, everything else, all these entities and spirits and energies are all there all the time. They're not going away. This is their domain too. They all live there as well. And if you're communicating with someone through whatever medium, through whatever means, you're just turning on the radio and turning the dial till you get that connection. Now, if you stop that communication, that in essence either unplugs the radio or turns the dial to static or another station or whatever. It doesn't necessarily keep that open, and it doesn't necessarily bring anything through. Now, as far as portal closings, let's address that. Over the years, I'm familiar with all this stuff. I've studied all this stuff. I've had over 1,000 paranormal manifestations, probably done hundreds of paranormal investigations, had all these experiences. So I know what I'm talking about here. And I've investigated these things that other people have claimed. Oh, a ghost tried to kill me, it pushed me, it scratched me, it bit me, or whatever. No, it didn't. The thing about trying to close a portal, these portals exist independent of us, mostly. We can attempt to open a portal or bring through a certain intelligence or being or this, that, and the other, whatever. But mostly these things are there all the time, whether we're aware of them or not. Now, there was a wonderful, wonderful thing that happened to confirm what I'm saying here. And that was, there was a world famous New York Times best-selling paranormal investigator author that was if I said the name, everybody and their dog would immediately know who it was. And they proclaimed themselves to be the ultimate authority on everything paranormal and on the other side. Mm-hmm. And my wife had a friend, when my wife and I got together, my wife had a friend that was a psychic and was friends with this world famous personage. And they worked together. And I think that mainly the reason he worked with this psychic was a romantic interest. I think that's really all it was. So anyways, they would go together to places that people were, oh, it's haunted, or we have poltergeist, or we have a demon, or we have an attachment, or we have this, that, and the other. And they would go and shoo, scare the ghost away and close the portal, which you don't do. I'll backtrack and say that every single instance that I know of, that I've investigated personally, where a person has called in a priest, a rabbi, a minister, an exorcist, a psychic, whatever, whomever, to cast a spirit out, close a portal, do this, do that, not only does it not work, it usually makes it worse. Why does it make it worse? Because the intelligence on the other side is, oh, yeah, watch this, fool. So, anyways, this family had this multiple experiences with the paranormal, and it scared them like it scares a lot of people because we're taught to be afraid. We don't understand that we don't have to be afraid. We're taught to be afraid. So they were afraid. So they called the world famous personage and the psychic to come together and what can you do here? What can you help? Okay. Well, they came and they shooed the ghosts away and they closed the portal. Nothing else is going to come through. The door's closed to the spirit realm. The portal's closed. The ghosts are gone. You're never going to be bothered again. Everything's copacetic. Now, as we all know, history is written by the victors, right? So this was the party line that was given. Successful investigation. Another one's in the books. Family helped. Everything's copacetic. So I knew it was BS. I just didn't know how to prove it was BS. Until one day I'm in one of the big chain bookstores. And as is my wont, I'm browsing the paranormal section. And this book leaps out at me. I see this title and it's like a spotlight on this thing. And I'm like, what is this? And I grab it and I pull it out and I look at it and guess what it is? It is that story. It is those people, their house, but written from their perspective. They wrote the book. We call the world famous guy and the psychic and they came and this is what they did. And it's from their perspective. They are telling the story. And the story is, they came, they shoot away the ghosts, they said the portals were closed, and guess what? It got worse. Not only did it return, it got worse. So there was my validation, there was my proof, there was my vindication that it's all BS. Yeah. You know, people don't understand that. I always get tickled at people that think, okay, here I am, a mortal person. I'm not in good health. I'm broke. I'm going to die, you know, down the road like everybody else. So I'm going to invoke and control this powerful, masterful being to come and do my bidding, and then I'm going to get rid of it and close the portal, go away. How retarded is that to think this? How arrogant is it to think that, you know? So we have to understand that we're dealing with spiritual intelligences that have their own will, their own volition, their own purposes, their own meanings, their own thoughts, their own desires. Some of them are on a much higher plane, yes. Some of them are on a much, quote unquote, lower plane. Some elementals are nature spirits, for example. It doesn't mean they're not intelligent. Doesn't mean they're not smart. It doesn't mean they don't have emotion. It just means they're not Einstein. I'm not either. Okay. It doesn't mean they're malevolent. It doesn't mean they're harmful or they're evil or they're demonic. It just means they're different than what you would, they're not the blue-eyed, long blonde-haired guardian angel in the white robe with the white rings. They're not that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to understand that. It doesn't mean it's something that we have to be afraid of, but it just means that it operates differently. And we have to understand that.
So I've always kind of seen portals in the same way that, there's like ley lines, there's water, there's mountains, there's vortexes, that these exist. They're there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're not going to
they're just
empty the ocean tomorrow. We don't have that ability to do that. These are functions and properties that are part of the planet.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And we don't control or manipulate those for the most part. 99% of that, like you say, that's a function of the planet. It's a function of the spiritual realm with which we connect. It's just part and parcel of being there. And we exercise very little, if any, control over that or manipulation of that. And it's just like, Bigfoot or anything else. We don't control that. It's a part of the world in which we live, and it occasionally, for some reason, chooses to interact with us. But I don't know of anybody. Well, I take that back. I don't know of anybody that regularly goes out and says, "Hey, Bigfoot, I want to get a picture of you or interact with you or talk with you or whatever." Now, I do have a client who I cannot name and will not name that the original people with the Gimbal Patterson film are connected with them, and they go to a place in the U.S. where I will not name, and they interact with Bigfoots and with their families, including the little ones. And I have a standing invitation to go with them and to experience that, which unfortunately, because of my health issues, I cannot do. It's would require some hiking into some rugged territory. I do good to make it across the house now. So if there were a Bigfoot that could come pick me up and carry me into the encampment and thank you, and it's nice to be here and I can interact with you now, I could do it that way, but otherwise I can't. But I have that standing invitation, and this is someone that is completely credible, completely reliable, and they have gone, and there's this family of Bigfoots that they have interacted with over the years, including their offspring, their little ones. And the Bigfoots will make things in the forest out of twigs, branches, and things and bring them to them for presents. And they have all this marvelous, marvelous, wonderful interaction. But, as a rule, we don't get that privilege. We don't get that control over things. And this really is not a control. This is just a blessing that, these Bigfoots there have decided, okay, these people don't mean us any harm. They're honest. They're coming up here with a pure heart, and they're not telling where we're at, and they're not taking pictures, and they're not, hey, y'all come up with the research crew and the cameras and all this. They're not doing that. They're keeping this, sacrosanct. And so they have this marvelous interaction with them. And I still have that standing invitation to go. And God, I wish I could, but health just precludes it. But, for the most part, we don't get control over these things. And we need to understand that. We need to understand that it's an established rapport, and that you want to approach the spiritual realm with respect, with honesty, without trying to make a buck. And just come to these intelligences and say, okay, what can I learn from you? And not just what can you do for me? What can I do for you? Is there any energy that I can send your way? Is there any message I can give to anyone? Is there anything that I can do in my environment? Can I go out and build a spiral out of stones in the backyard? Will that help make things better or easier communication, or just make you feel better? Is there something I can do in my house? Is there incense or candles that you like or music you like that I can make your life happier and pleasure with? We go to the other side and it's like, give me this, Make me win the lottery. Make my health better. Bring my girlfriend back. Bring my boyfriend back. I
Mm-hmm.
want a new car. I want this. I want that. I want this. I want that. And we never shut up. And we never listen. We never say, what can we do for you? You know, it needs to be a two-way street, and we need to establish that rapport between us and the other side. And it's not commanding and banishing and invoking and all this. It's developing a rapport. And that's when true magic occurs.
I love that. I mean, there's so many connections my brain has made to everything you've said. And it's nature.
It
is natural. It is. And we are all part of it.
Yes, we are.
All connected to it, but many people have become less connected to it, blocked it.
Yeah.
Because of, in my opinion, and I'm sorry to anyone out there who, you know, I'm making upset, but indoctrinated beliefs.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's like when you study, like, you know, anthropology, and you study people, and you study them throughout history and time, you see that, you know, a lot of people who are most connected still to this planet are indigenous people.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. Like, you can't just, you can't break your connection. You got to keep it, because there's so much to learn from it. And I love the point you made about listening.
Yeah.
Just, even if you're just spending time in a forest or on a sidewalk, you can hear the natural sounds around us.
Absolutely.
And,
absolutely.
you know, you can start with the birds, and you can start with the trees rustling. And then when you pay enough attention and you quiet your mind enough, you start to hear the energies.
Yep.
And the sound.
It progresses from there. Yeah, it progresses.
I love
from
that.
there. And, you know, the problem is, the reason we have difficulty connecting with the other side, we have that indoctrination. We're indoctrinated to religion, and we grow up a certain way. This is acceptable. This is not. This is a miracle. This is demonic.
Yeah. And
then you translate that or transliterate that, expand that to other religions and other belief systems. And then you get even into the paranormal, the spiritual realms. You get people that have, again, going back to the biases, the way they view things, the way they were taught, or the way this says to do a thing, or this says to do a thing this way, or whatever. And so by doing that, we lose the connection with what is real, what's out there, what's intelligent, what's actual. And I always tell my clients ask me, apart from developing their psychic abilities, like in the book, my clients always ask me, you know, what do I do? How do I get that connection? And I say, don't join a group. Don't go to a church. Don't follow a philosophy. Don't follow a teaching. Go and get quiet and sit down and go, okay, God, Holy Spirit, universal mind, spirit guides, guardian, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you perceive this to be, address them that way and go, here I am. What do I need to learn today? Please show me and please teach me. That's where you start. And then you get quiet and you listen. You listen to your intuition. You pay attention to your dreams. You pay attention to the circumstances, the things that come into your environment. And you do that every single day. And you give thanks for the things that you're shown. You appreciate what they've taught you. And you say, okay, where do I go next? What do I learn next? What's my next step? What do I do now? And that's the best place to learn, is from the source. And you don't have to have a mentor. You don't have to have a guide. You don't have to have a guru. You don't have a teacher or a book or a religion or anything else. Just go to the source. Say, okay, here I am. I believe in you. I know you. I know you're there. Talk to me. Tell me what I need to be doing in my life to make my life better and to make the lives of other people better. And just listen and then do it.
Love that.
And it's truth. I mean, it's, you know, we want to complicate things.
Yes.
And, you know, the problem with systems, regardless of what system it is, you know, number one, 99% of the time they don't work. And number two, it's usually putting a lot of money in somebody else's pocket and not doing you any good. And, you know, number three, it complicates things that don't need to be complicated. And it's like in my third book, 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities, I say in the book, look, you're going to have people tell you, oh, this guy doesn't understand me. He doesn't know anything. He hadn't studied. He hadn't blah, 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 blah. You got to do this and you got to, no, you don't.
No, you
You
don't.
know, it's really pretty simple and cut and dried and easy. No, you don't. It doesn't take all these special tools or incantations or study, or you don't have to open portals and close portals. You don't have to do this, do that, do that. It just is there. That's the way it is. If you want to use it, here's how to connect with it. And it's really simple. It's really cut and dried and pretty easy. And everybody that I've taught these tools and techniques to over the years has used them successfully and has had very positive experiences with them and have been very thankful to me in saying, hey, thank you for simplifying this into something that I could understand and that works. You know, and that's what it should be. And it doesn't have to be a system. There's no system in this book. There is not a system in this book. It's just things that the other side has taught me that work. And I'm telling you, here it is, cut and dried, plain and simple, super easy. If you want to learn it, here's how to do it. If you want to practice it, here's how to do it and how to get good at it. Here's the real world application of it. Go do it. And you don't need anybody. You just need the book, and you just need to sit down and do it. You don't need a system or a religion or a whatever. Just do it.
Are there any types of people that you would steer away from or not recommend getting in tune with their psychic abilities?
Well, I tell people, if anything bothers you or if anything scares you, don't do it. It's that simple. It's that easy. If tarot cards scare you, don't buy a tarot card deck and use them. Never mind the Ouija board. If dowsing rods scare you, if you've had a bad experience with dowsing rods in your mind, or you think you know somebody that has, if it frightens you, don't do it. Anything that frightens you, don't do it. But what I've attempted to do over the years, I've told people, I said, like these so-called ghost hunting shows on TV, which are mostly totally fake, and not a real representation of connecting with the other side. What I've explained to people over the years, and I've had a lot of feedback from the readers of my books and from my clients, tell me, John, thank you for taking the fear out of this and for letting us know that we can contact and have a rapport with the spiritual realm and get helpful, useful guidance without danger and without worry and without fear. And so that's been my big message in all this over the years is look, there's nothing here intrinsically to be afraid of when you're going into this. If you're naturally afraid, you're going to concoct something to be afraid of, or you're going to misinterpret something that happened as something to be afraid of. I had a woman one time that told me I was shooting the TV pilot for the History Channel, and this woman came to me and she said, one of the docents at the places where we were filming, and she said, I have to talk to you when you get a break in the filming. This ghost tried to kill me. And I said, oh my God, here we go. And I said, no ghost tried to kill you. Yes, this ghost tried to kill me. I'll tell you about it. So I said, all right. So we got to break in the filming. We went off into another room. And she said, I was in my kitchen. She said, the cupboard door opened by itself. This plate flew off the cupboard shelf, flew across the kitchen, hit the wall 2 feet away from me, shattered into pieces, fell to the floor. This ghost tried to kill me. I was laughing. I said, because I'd already tuned into the psychic realm to figure out what was going on before I talked to her. I said, no ghost tried to kill you. The ghost wasn't even trying to hurt you. If he was, he would have hit you with the plate. I said, what's happened in your circumstances is the other side's been trying to communicate helpful guidance and get some things through to you over the years, and you've been ignoring them. You've pushed it away. You've turned a deaf ear, and there's things that they really need to get through to you, and they really want to guide you, and they really want to help you, and they've been trying to all this time. You've been pushing it away, turning it away, pushing it away, turning it away. And I said, finally, they reached a point of frustration, and it was like, okay, ignore this. You can't ignore this. This is reality. A plate flies out of the cupboard by itself, flies across the room and shatters. You can't ignore that. You can't pretend that's not real. And I said, so what you do with that now, you take that, you incorporate it into your life and say, okay, I've got beneficial forces out there that are trying to get my attention so they can guide me and so that they can help me. And I said, that's what you do from there. So a lot of things that we experience, we misinterpret because we've been taught to fear. Our religion has taught us to fear. Our religion has taught us it's malevolent or demonic. You know, it's okay if in the church you have talking animals and floating iron axe heads and a prophet that calls bears out of the woods to eat kids that were taunting him. That's okay if it's in the church. But if something happens outside the church, oh my God, it's malevolent, it's demonic, it's sinister, it's evil. You've opened a portal, you're going to get an attachment. You know, it's ridiculous. It's just crazy what we believe and how we're raised and what we think. So
I feel like a lot of the indoctrination and the nurturing of fear is actually what has manifested a lot of the ickies when there are.
Sure. Well, or we imagine that there's something fearful there when there's not.
No.
You know, our imagination plays tricks on us, and we allow ourselves to get spooked, and you know, we can raise goosebumps on ourselves if we think we see something in the dark that's not there.
Yes.
And then, oh God, that was scary. You know, well, there's nothing scary there. It was something you imagined, something you let your imagination run away with. And you know, there's so many things that we're taught to fear. You know, we're taught to fear snakes, and a herpetologist loves snakes.
I love snakes.
Yeah. So, you know, there's all kinds of things we're taught to fear that we don't necessarily need to fear. And it's, I'll tell you a real funny story here. And it has kind of a psychic component to it, kind of a psychic connection. When I was a young man, I had a buddy, my best friend, and we rode around on my motorcycle a lot. And like any good West Texan, I was taught to fear all snakes and to kill all snakes. The only good snake is a dead snake. And so my buddy and I were riding down the street, and it was getting close to twilight. We were running up and down the drag looking for action, and there was a big park there, big city park there. And as we were going by, there was this guy out there with this monstrously huge, monstrously long snake crawling through the grass. And I was like, holy crap, look at this. And man, I hit the throttle on the bike. I'm out of there. And my buddy goes, wait, go back. I know this guy. Go back. I'm like, I ain't going back. Did you see that thing? He said, go back. I know this guy. So we go back. I park on the street by the park there. And my buddy goes up to say hi to the guy. And he's like, come on, I'll introduce you. And I'm like, nope. Because this thing's like 12 feet long.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm not getting near the snake. Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? He's like, come on. He said, I know this guy. I'm like, nope. So I'm on the street by my bike. Excuse me. And he goes up to talk to his buddy. So finally he's like, John, come on, man. You're being rude. Come up here and say hi to my friend. Meet my friend. The guy's like, come on. The snake's not going to hurt you. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I go up and I meet the guy. And here's this 12-foot boa constrictor leisurely crawling through the grass and just enjoying himself, having a good time. And so we're all talking. I'm watching this thing, and I'm like, oh my God, it's a devil incarnate here. And he's like, John, go over and touch the snake, pet the snake. I'm like, are you out of your mind? He's like, he said, look, there's nothing to be afraid of. Overcome your fear. Just go pet him. So he finally talks me into going and touching the snake. So I go way down to his tail, and I reach out and I touch him, and he raises his head up and looks around, and I run. And he's like, what are you running for? And I said, look, he's coming to get me. And he said he recognized a strange touch that he's not familiar with, and he's just looking around. Who's that? That's all.
Yes.
And I'm like, snakes have understanding? Snakes have feelings? Get out of here. So we're talking and everything, and he's like, John, just go over and just hold him, feel him, touch him, get to know him. So I'll go over there and way from the head, way towards the back. I take this deep breath, and I grab his body with both my hands, and he starts crawling through my hands. He's like going super, super slow. He's just like chilling. And I'm like, my God. I said, he's not slimy, and he's not wet.
No.
And his little underbelly is like really soft and squishy. Yeah. And his scales feel really weird and strange and kind of wonderful. And I said, my God, the strength. the power this thing
Yes.
has. And I'm like, just freaking out. And I'm like, okay, all right, well, that's enough. So we're standing there talking, and it's getting darker and darker. And he said, hey, why don't we go up to the diner up here, which is a few blocks from the park? And he said, why don't we go up to the diner? We'll get something to eat. And I said, what about the snake? And he said, I'll carry him in with me. I said, how are you going to do that? So he's got this big white cloth bag. The snake goes in it. He slings it over his shoulder, and he carries the snake everywhere. He's had the snake since the snake was a foot long.
Wow.
He's raised him his whole life. Anywhere he goes, the snake goes. If he can't go in someplace because of the snake, he just doesn't go in. So there's all these bars and restaurants and things that let him bring the snake in as long as he didn't take it out of the bag. Some places, they actually let him take it out, like put it on the table or the counter or whatever, because the snake's like super well behaved. It just lays there and, okay, get the snake a glass of water or whatever, and the snake will drink some water. So he stuffs the snake in the bag. We go back and get on the bike, go up to the restaurant and meet him up there. And we're all standing in the parking lot about to go in. This car full of girls pulls in. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, look at this. Yeah. So I'm getting ready to style out here and meet these chicks. Well, they know the guy with the snake. So I'm like, oh, there's an easy in right there. So they said, hey, you got the snake? And of course I got the snake. I never go anywhere without the snake. Oh, let me see. So he opens up the bag and pulls about 4 or 5 feet of the snake out, and they're petting the snake and looking at the snake. And so about this time, he turns around and goes, John, hold the snake, and just thrusts him at me. And reflexively, I put my arms out so the snake wouldn't fall to the ground. Now I've got this monster 9,000-pound behemoth with a head that's bigger than my hand and my arms, and he's in this S position with his little neck and head looking at me, and I'm like, oh my God, he's fixing to strike me, he's fixing to bite me. Goes, John, that's how his head has to move around some way. He has to twist his body around some way so that his head can look and see. He's not fixing to do anything to you. The girls are laughing. I've lost all street cred with them. There's no hope of getting with these chicks tonight. They're laughing their head off at me. I'm like, oh my God. And of course, the snake doesn't bite me. So he stuffs him back in the bag, and we go in the restaurant to sit down, and it's pretty crowded in the booth right behind them. So him and my buddy sit together, and he puts the snake over here with me in the bag. I'm like, oh, wonderful. I'm sitting with the snake. So the guys in the booth, and this was the days of the hippies and the cowboys, right?
Yes.
So we're all long-haired, and these guys are all like clean-cut and stuff. Now, I'm 6 foot. The guy with the snake is 6 foot, but we're like 140 pounds soaking wet, maybe. And my other buddy, he's like built literally like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but he's like 5'7", 5'8", right? The smallest one of these guys in the booth is like 6 foot 240, and he's the baby. And these guys aren't fat; they're muscle.
Yes.
And he's the smallest one. The other guys are well over 6 foot and like behemoths, big, huge, muscled up guys. And they're short, clean cut. They're looking at our long hair, and here come the hippie jokes and the lady jokes and the this and the that. So we're ignoring them. And about this time, they start saying, yeah, we're going to get these guys out in the parking lot. When we finish eating, they're going to be a good tune-up for the bars we're going to go tear up later. And they're serious.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, my God. I said, okay. Now, me and my buddy, we're like super heavy into the martial arts, and we're really good in the martial arts. But you've got like 4 6 foot plus, 200 pound plus guys. It's not going to be pretty. Even if you're really, really good in martial arts, it's not going to be pretty. So we're like, oh, my God, how the hell are we going to get out of this mess? And they're over there just laughing and carrying on about what they're going to do to us. And so the guy with the snake, he looks over at me and he says, hey, John, check on the snake. I said, what? So make sure the snake's okay. I said, what do you mean? Open up the bag, make sure the snake's all right. So I'm like, oh, Christ, I've handled the thing. Now I got to go in. I got to open the bag up and look at this thing. So I open the bag up. There he is looking up at me, flicking his little tongue in and out. And his head is like the size of a damn watermelon. I'm like, oh, my God. And he just pull him out. Make sure he's all right. I said, what? He said, pull him out of the bag. Make sure he's okay. So I take a real deep breath, and I reach in and I grab him, and he's just docile as can be, and I pull him out, and I drag about 4 or 5 feet of this thing out of the bag, and the guy that's sitting facing us screams, curses, jumps over the counter into the kitchen and runs out the front door. The two guys that are away from us turn around to see what's going on, what he jumped for. They see the snake. They jump and run and scream and yell and curse and run out the front door. And the one guy's left, and he's laughing, and he shakes his head, and he starts writing out a check to pay the bill. And he looked up at us, and he said, "Well played, gentlemen, well played."
Yes.
So the snake, with a psychic connection with his owner, literally saved us from a beatdown that life. And I said, "Man, whatever this sucker eats, if he wants a steak, whatever, I'm buying it for him." And he said, "Well, he doesn't eat steak, and I don't think they have live rabbits on the menu. But," he said, "if you'll tell him that you appreciate this, he will know, and he will understand."
Yep.
And I hugged that snake, and I said, "Thank you." And that's the story of the snake that saved us from a beatdown.
I love that. And, it's so, a lot of, even in science, there's a lot of this, well, snakes don't have that type of complex intelligence, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to say blah, 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 because really that's what it is. I mean,
it is, yeah.
I love snakes, and
they have a very complex intelligence, and they have emotion and feeling, and they know things, and they have an ability to intuit things. And since that time, I've had pet snakes and just been amazed at their intelligence, at their emotion, at their ability to bond. And it's really amazing. So going back, into the paranormal realm, we're taught to fear things unnecessarily.
Yes.
We're taught to fear things, physically, emotionally, psychically, spiritually, that we don't need to be afraid of. And most of that comes from either our religious upbringing or from believing that the Exorcist movie is real and that's what it's really like in the spiritual realm. And so we're taught all these, ways to fear and things to fear that we don't need to be fearing, that there's no reason to fear. There's no reason to be afraid of. And whenever I've talked to people that have had some experience that they have feared, I've been able to explain to them that, look, here's why you feared that. Here's the reason you don't need to fear that. Here's how you overcome that fear, and here's how you interact with this. And, that's the message that we've got to get out there, that the ghost hunter shows aren't real. The horror movies aren't real. It may be good entertainment, but it's not reality. It's not real. And, the chance of you opening up a portal or an attachment or whatever to some demonic entity or intelligence that's going to decide to make your life miserable and blah, 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 blah. I've never experienced anything like that. And all the years that I've done this, and in investigating other people that claim they have, that hadn't been the case. It's been a misinterpretation of something, their own reaction to something based on their religious upbringing or their fear or their belief that horror movies are really the way it is or whatever. And, there's not to deny that there isn't evil in the world. Of course there is. And that's got to transliterate somehow into the spiritual realm as well. But I think you have to really be going off the rails in a bad and big way to attract with or interact any of that, or to have any of that really connect into your life in any way. Because for the most part out there, there's helpful guidance, there's protection. Our guardian angels protect us and watch over us. And if we'll tune into that and understand that and believe that, that's what will make our lives better, and that's what will alleviate those fears.
Well,
I'll have to say, when you were giving the snake story and you were talking about riding in on the motorcycle at the very beginning and how you guys play jokes with each other, the first thing that came to my mind was Wild Hogs. Have you seen that movie?
Oh yeah.
Where they're like, just go touch the snake, just go touch the snake. And I'm thinking about the butt smacking on the bulls.
Yep. Little bull smack for everybody. Yep.
Oh, I'm totally getting this play-by-play in my mind of.
Yep. Just touch the snake. Just pet the snake. But fortunately, for me, touching the snake and petting the snake had a much better outcome than slap the bulls.
Right.
I just thought that was funny. I wanted to share that.
It is. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I know, and I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to actually pop off here at 7, but I I really
that's
want to.
okay. We're getting kind of run out of time here, anyways. I need to be going as well, so that's okay.
But wait, but I
yeah,
really wanted to talk to you again about, the discussion of marrying science and physics. You know how we were discussing that in group intention.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if we're going to make the progress that we want and need to make in the spiritual realm, we're going to have to marry science and religion.
Yes.
Science and spirituality, psychic and paranormal, and psychic and paranormal realms of science. And the problem with that is, scientists are taught that doesn't exist to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
and so they have that bias. And people in the paranormal community have been disparaged by scientists and by so-called skeptics and things so much that they're reluctant to work with anybody because, they're tired of being made fun of and so on and so forth. But, there is proof. You look at Stanford Research Institute and you look at, the various other parapsychological research institutes out there that have proven scientifically that yes, this exists in reality, that there is scientific evidence for it, that it is scientifically provable. And you have to realize there's been a lot of valid research done out there and a lot of research that does demonstrate the reality of this. And I think that, why do we need science? Why do we need that to marry with the psychic realm, the paranormal realm?
Mm-hmm.
Well, for one thing, for one example, electronic voice phenomenon, EVP, where you record spirit voices.
Yes.
That's still, for all these years that it's been done, for all the technology we have, it's still kind of in its infancy because you don't get very long sentences. You usually only get a few words. A lot of times it's very hard to hear. And so there is a demonstrable real communication there from the spirit realm. But we're just not connecting with it the right way. And to do that, I think we need science to do that. I talked with, there was someone on a podcast that I was being interviewed on that was a professional musician. And they said, John, I can take any musical note, any song, any sound, anything, put it in the software, find out the frequency that's on, manipulate it, do anything I want to with it. But he said, I can take EVP and put it in the software. I can hear it, but I cannot find the frequency that it's on.
Yes.
And I said, this is the key. When science says, okay, EVP is real, it's a communication from another realm.
Mm-hmm.
What frequency are they using? Where in this white noise? Where in this static? What is in there that they use to communicate with us? When we can find that frequency scientifically, we're going to have real-time two-way communications with the other side. And I can do that psychically, but you can't hear it. And so you have to take my word for it. Although there are times that I hold communications, like in paranormal investigations, I hold communications with the other side. They give me information, and then we can validate that after the fact as being a real communication. Is like, yes, this person actually lived here. This event actually happened, whatever. But think of the possibility to sit there with a real-time two-way communication with the other side that lasts maybe a minute or two. How's your life over there? Do you have any messages for your loved ones here? Is there anything we need to know to advance our spirituality better? And, it's like, well, why don't we get that from the spiritual realm now through psychics and mediums, so on and so forth? It's a very difficult communication. I think there's some things that maybe we're just not meant to know. That's not a cop-out, but maybe there are just some things that we're not meant to know at that time. And again, I have to go back to when I was a kid. We met a guy that had a ham radio, shortwave radio. And on a good night, when the conditions were just right, we could talk to somebody in England or Australia or wherever from West Texas. We might talk 10 or 15 minutes, and it sounded like they were right in the room with us. And the next night, we'd do good to reach somebody across town. So just like we have difficulties with radio waves here and transmitting and receiving things on this planet physically, I think that it's the same way and transmitting, receiving things to and from the other side. That sometimes conditions are better, that are just right. We get a longer and a better and a more complex, more detailed communication, and other times it's more difficult. And that can explain why one night you go to a location and you get a ton of physical demonstrations, a ton of spirit communication, and so on and so forth. You might go there again the next night and not get anything.
Yes.
And I think it has to do with those conditions. So that's why we need to marry, the science and the psychic together.
Well, and the conditions. I love that you bring that up because, when you study back on ancient civilizations, they actually put a lot of focus in both, right?
Yeah.
In science and psychic energy.
Exactly.
And magic.
Yep.
And they did it in such a way where there wasn't this it wasn't an oogie boogie man thing.
Exactly.
It was to gain more knowledge, right? And then
we had, normal function
of
the time. And it was a normal understanding that the science and the psychic, the paranormal realm all went together. And there was this understanding that you created the best environment that you could for that to manifest and to communicate. And I think they understood that a lot better than we do. And that's what we've got to get back to. Yeah.
And, they understood so much. And if you look at it right, like you were saying, the right conditions. Well, our planet is always spinning and moving.
Yep. Yep.
And so those just like a satellite frequency, it's going to change depending upon where you're at that exact moment, right?
Exactly.
And it's studying the stars. It's understanding, okay, this is where the alignment is. Having the astronomers involved with it, as well as the physicists, because, even in physics, there's a lot of physicists who are really trying to understand the spiritual energy.
Exactly.
Because energy never dies. It only transforms. And we know, we are electrical beings.
Yep.
We are spiritual. We have actual measurable energy.
Yep, exactly.
So when we die, we don't just die out and our energy doesn't get destroyed when we get put into the fire or into the hole in the earth. No, our energy transforms.
Yeah, it translates, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yep. So that's how we have to do it. So, well, that's a good point to end on.
Yes.
I've enjoyed this very, very much.
I'm so honored and grateful.
Oh, thank you. I hope you guys have enjoyed it as well. Hope 100%. The listeners will enjoy it. And we'll do it down the road again because we've got a lot more to cover.
we would love that.
Absolutely.
So appreciate
Absolutely.
It.
Maya, you're muted.
Sorry.
There you go.
So at least I wasn't interrupting anybody, right?
Yeah, there you go. Always a positivity there.
So where can our listeners find your 20 ways to increase your psychic abilities?
That's available at all the bookstores online. And you can go to, I've created an author webpage, which is johnrussellauthor.com. Two S's, two L's in Russell, johnrussellauthor.com. And it's got all my books there, the information about my books. Each book then has a link on that page, the cover on that page. You click on it, it takes you to that book's own individual page, which gives you the book's awards, reviews, testimonials, editorial reviews, readers' reviews, and then links where to buy it. So you can go to your favorite bookstore. You can go to Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million. I put some mom and pop bookstores in there that are independent bookstores as well. You can get it through them. So it's available everywhere. And then if anybody wants to find out more about me, maybe schedule a reading or whatever, just go to johnrussell.net. And that's my psychic page, and it's got the full information there. So johnrussell.net and then johnrussellauthor.com. And again, if you go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, any of those places, and just enter the title, 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities, it'll pop up. You can buy it there. Or again, you can go to my website and use the links there, and it's available there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This Ask a Psychic thing has been a lot of fun.
I've enjoyed it. I appreciate the invitation. I've had a blast tonight,
Same.
and we'll definitely do it again.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.